I used to think I just liked being alone. Then I learned the real reason, and it wasn't peace. It was something that happened to me years ago that I never connected to it. Some of the most independent people you know aren't naturally that way. They were trained into it, and once you see why, you genuinely can't unsee it. Here are 6 hidden psychological patterns that explain why some people feel safer alone than with others. Not because they hate people, because of what they learned early. Number 1. Insecure attachment. When closeness felt unpredictable. Imagine growing up never knowing which version of your parent you'd get. Warm one day, distant and cold the next. No consistency. Your brain learns something important from that. Connection isn't safe. Psychology calls this insecure attachment. And here's the twist. When love feels unpredictable, you don't chase it harder. You start pulling away from it. Not because you don't want connection, because inconsistency itself starts to feel like risk. So you adapt. You become someone who enjoys people in small, controlled amounts. Someone who feels calmest alone, because alone is stable. Alone doesn't suddenly change on you. Number 2. When your emotions were ignored. This one leaves no visible scars, but it shapes everything. You were upset and told you were overreacting. You tried to explain and got dismissed. You needed someone to listen, and no one really did. So eventually, you stopped explaining, stopped expressing, stopped expecting. Your brain wrote a new rule: handle everything alone. As an adult, this shows up quietly. You rarely open up. You process everything internally. When things get hard, you withdraw instead of reaching out, not because you don't need support, but because you learned a long time ago it wouldn't be there. 3. Forced emotional independence too early. Some people didn't choose independence. They were pushed into it. As a kid, you had to calm yourself down, figure things out, alone. And from that, a belief formed. I can only rely on myself. From the outside, this looks like strength. Capable, responsible, self-sufficient. Underneath it, discomfort with vulnerability, discomfort with needing anyone. Because in your experience, needing help didn't feel safe. It felt like becoming a burden. So, you adapted. You stopped needing, or convinced yourself you had. And being alone stopped feeling empty. It started feeling controlled. Number 4. Social overload. When silence feels like recovery. For some people, being around others isn't just socializing. It's stimulation, voices, expectations, energy, all hitting at once. If you grew up somewhere already overwhelming, tension, arguments, unpredictability, your nervous system adapted. It got more alert, more easily drained. So instead of seeking more interaction, you started seeking relief. And that relief came from being alone. No pressure to perform, no room to read, just quiet. For you, solitude was never avoidance. It was recovery. 5. High sensitivity. Feeling everything all at once. Some people are simply wired to feel more deeply, more often. Psychology calls this being a highly sensitive person. You notice subtle shifts in tone others missed. You absorbed emotions that weren't even yours. And as a kid, with nobody teaching you how to process any of it, that became overwhelming fast. So you found your own way through it. You stepped back, created space to think, to reset, to breathe. That pattern never really left. As an adult, you're not avoiding people. You're just limiting exposure, because your inner world needs time to rebalance. Number 6. The difference between being alone and being lonely. This is where most people get it wrong. Loneliness is the pain of lacking connection. Choosing solitude is something else entirely. Intentional, controlled. People who prefer solitude are often fully capable of deep connection. They can love, they can care, but they're selective, because they've learned the hard way that not everyone is safe. So instead of constantly chasing connection, they choose it on their own terms, with people who actually feel right. Put all 6 of these together and the whole story changes. You weren't born wanting to be alone. You adapted into it. Because at some point, being alone felt safer than being misunderstood. Safer than being ignored. Safer than being let down. Your mind did exactly what it was built to do. It protected you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not incapable of connection. You're someone who learned how to survive emotionally without depending on anyone else. That takes real strength. But here's the trade-off nobody mentions. The same pattern that protected you can also quietly limit you. When you stop needing people, you also stop letting them in. So the real question isn't, why do I like being alone? The real question is, do I choose solitude or do I default to it? Because those aren't the same thing. Choice feels calm. Default feels automatic. Invisible, unquestioned. You don't need to force yourself into constant socializing. That's not the goal. The goal is just awareness. Knowing when you're alone because you want to be, and when you're alone because it simply feels safer. Because once you see that difference, you get something back you didn't have before. Choice.